Easter Sunday. As years go by, Easter Sunday and the Easter story has become one of my favorite Bible stories. And the more I think about it, the more I consider the path of the Easter story, starting at Palm Sunday and going through the darkness of Gethsemane and into a place of death and pain, and then a place of darkness, and then emerging into new life. The more I think of that process, I see parallels about that process in life. And I think that the Easter story can help all of us to navigate whatever changes we may be experiencing in life. In effect, it can offer us a process that will move us from life to life, so to speak. Before we look at how I think we can learn from the story, let's just review the Easter story for a few moments. It starts at Palm Sunday, Holy Week, beginning last week when Jesus goes into Jerusalem along with many, many other people traveling into Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. And he is acclaimed as the Messiah. People wave palms and they sing Hosanna, and they look to this man as if he's going to conquer them or deliver them from the Roman occupation. And Jesus upends everything that they expected by going to the table and overturning the tables at the temple, and telling the priests that this should be a house of prayer and you've made it into a house of thieves. Not your best way to win friends and influence people. And it sets in motion the events that lead to Jesus then becoming turned over to the Romans, betrayed by his best friend. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays. He knows something's going to happen. And at the dinner prior to the Garden of Gethsemane, on what they call Maundy Thursday, Jesus turns to Judas and he says, do what you need to do quickly. So it's like he knew something was going on. And Judas goes off, betrays Jesus to the Roman centurions, and Jesus then goes into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And he asks 3 of his disciples to come with him, and he asks them 3 times to stay awake with him. 3 times they say no. Eventually, Jesus kind of realizes he's got to do this by himself. So he's in a place of prayer. He asks God to take this cup away from me. And at some point, he realizes nothing's going to change. Into which then he says, your will, not mine, be done. He gets arrested. And did you know that on the night that he was arrested, I think it was Peter cut off the ear of one of the servants of one of the priests. And Jesus, in the midst of this turmoil and going into a place of certain criminality and potentially death, he takes the time to heal the guy's ear. The following morning, he is brought up in front of the Roman leaders 3 times. He's brought up in front of the religious leadership, the Jewish leadership, 3 times. And all of those times, he is not able, nobody wants to free him. Oh, Max is just having so much fun. Aww. No. It's absolutely fine. It's let Max do what Max does. He's having a great time. It'll be good for us all to practice. Excuse me. So he tells Judas what he needs to do quickly. He gets brought in front of the criminal court the following day. The Jewish ministers say he's got to go. The Roman leadership says he's got to go. And the people who adored him 4 days before have the opportunity to free him, because it's Passover, and the tradition is that one prisoner is freed on Passover. So they said, hey, do you want this guy to be freed, Jesus, or do you want Barabbas to be freed? And the people choose Barabbas. So Jesus is knocked down at every turn, hero to zero. In this place, as this happens, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the detail. He then obviously is sentenced to death. And the choice of execution in those days was crucifixion. So he's crucified along with 2 other criminals. And from the cross, he speaks words of forgiveness. Father, forgive them, they don't know what they do. He offers words of encouragement to a fellow prisoner. Today you will be with me in paradise. He ensures that his mother will be taken care of. And then in agony, and perhaps as a way to comfort himself, he repeats the words of Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? He complains of thirst, and finally with the words, it is finished, and into thy hands I commend my spirit. Jesus dies. He's taken to a nearby tomb belonging to a wealthy man, Joseph of Arimathea, and he's placed in Joseph's tomb. And on the 3rd day, in the morning, it is found that the tomb's stone has been rolled away, and Jesus' body is no longer there. That's the Easter story, and it's an interesting story in and of itself. And I know that some people may have difficulty believing in the literal truth of the resurrection, and I want you to know that that's okay. I also know that there is more to what is unknown than I can wrap my head around. So I'm willing to consider that it's possible. But even if it's not in your realm to consider that resurrection, physical resurrection, is possible, I encourage you not to throw out the story and what we can learn from this story. Because there are lessons that we can learn from how Jesus conducted himself in that last week as he moved from hero to zero to hero again. And I think these lessons can help us as we go through our own Gethsemane experiences, when we reach that place where we're in something that we're facing that we absolutely don't flippin' want to face. It could be a diagnosis. It could be the end of a relationship. It could be something going on at work. It could be just something that you know you have to do that you're dreading doing. These steps that I see in the story can apply to all of us and all of our changes. The first thing that we see is that Jesus faced the problem. I know that the first thing I want to do when something negative is on my way, it's on its way, and I can see that train a-coming, I don't want to look at it. I want to go and stick my head in the sand somewhere under a blanket, whatever the metaphor might be that you would use. But the very last thing I want to do is turn around and actually look at that train coming. What did Jesus do? He centered himself he prayed. He accepted. And instead of arguing with what was inevitable, he used his energy instead to strengthen himself and to ready himself for the challenge to come. Let's be clear, it's not like he wanted to go through this. No person would. But when he could see that the train was a-coming, he faced that it was happening. And rather than argue against reality, he allowed himself to notice and accept it. Acknowledge that it was coming. So let's face whatever is in front of us. Look at it squarely, not pretending that it's something else and wishing it were something else, but looking at it face on. And then what he did is, these are all F's, by the way. Next one is faith it. Jesus trusted that there was some bigger reason behind what was happening. He couldn't necessarily tell what the reason was, just like we at times know that something is going to happen and we can see it coming and we don't know why. Somehow, in the midst of confusion and uncertainty and chaos, can we have faith that there is bliss in the mess? This is one of my mom's favorite sayings, was all things work together for good. Can we believe that all things are working together for good? And faith, have faith in that truth. At Unity, we believe there's only one power. Some call it God, some call it life, some call it agnosticism and atheism. Call it peanut butter, it doesn't matter. Doesn't change the fact that we're all interconnected, part of whatever the power is, whatever the energy is that allows us all to be here. Call it air. Call it nature. But when we see nature at work, we know that it is always creating, it's always changing, that there is always beauty somehow in what looks like a chaos or looks like death. I am reminded of a saying in the movie The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, that everything will be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. It's what Jerry would call the power of the semicolon. The story isn't over yet. Faith it. And when we faith it, then we come to F number 3, which is firm it. Stand firm in what you know is going to potentially be uncomfortable and withstand. Have the strength to stand firm with that faith. We see this so much in Jesus' example, this dignity and integrity that he had. And think about it, at any point, he could have booked it. He could have told them exactly what they wanted to hear. Imagine how it must have felt for him to have those people who he loved so dearly and who said they loved him back turn on him. Imagine how tempted he might have been to say, well, okay, yeah, I'll be whatever you need me to be, just don't hurt me. We've all been there at least at some point in our lives. That would be a more typical reaction. And yet what we see Jesus do is that he continues to have love for himself and compassion for other people, healing an ear. When he was asked if he was the king of the Jews, he calmly said, "You say that I am." There was no yes or no or denial or anything that might have got him the get out of jail free card. Instead, he stood firm. Could we have the strength, the integrity, and the commitment to our values to stand firm in the face of that kind of upheaval facing us? Firm it. And normally I would go on now to F number 4, but because Richard has a really cool song that fits with this, we're going to sing along. Stay seated. But we're going to sing along to Take It Easy by the Eagles. Because one of the best lines in that is, don't let the sound of your own wheels make you crazy. Stand firm. Take it easy.
Riding down the road, trying to loosen my load. I got several women on my mind. 4 that wanna own me, 2 that wanna stone me, 1 says she's a friend of mine. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. We may lose and we may win, though we will never be here again. So open up, I'm climbing in, and take it easy. Standing on a corner with so Arizona, such a fine sight to see. It's a girl, my lord, in a flat deck Ford, slowing down and taking a look at me. Come on, baby, don't say maybe. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me. We may lose and we may win, though we will never be here again. So open up, I'm climbing in, and take it easy. Running down the road, trying to loosen my load. Got a world of trouble on my mind. Looking for a lover, won't blow my cover. She's so hard to find. Take it easy, take it easy. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me. Oh, come on, baby, don't say maybe. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, we got it easy. We got it easy. We got it easy.
Told you. So, moving on to the next F. We've faced it, we've faced it, we've firmed it. Now we feel it. One of the things that we don't like to do is feel unpleasant things. And yet what we see in the next three F's, which are really the next three F's are what psychologists today might call closure. How do we get closure? Well, we see it in Jesus' example again. He absolutely, fully experiences his pain. He says, I thirst. Take this cup from me. And even repeating Psalm 22, why have you forsaken me, is something that he's reciting. Have you ever recited something that will help you to feel better? Some people would recite the Lord's Prayer or some sort of a mantra. Well, to me, that's what I hear when I hear Jesus saying, why have you forsaken me? Many people think that Jesus is actually saying those words and saying it directly to God. I don't believe that, because those exact words are found in the Psalms. So hundreds of years prior, the psalmist wrote, my God, why have you forsaken me? So Jesus is now doing what he needs to do to feel, and to feel in a way that restores himself as well. It's one thing to know that this will turn out well in the end, sure. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt now. You know that saying that when life closes a door, it opens a window, but nobody ever tells you that it's hell in the hallway. This is the hallway. Feel it. The grief that arises with any ending, even a welcome ending, but certainly one that isn't welcome, it is very real. And even when we can acknowledge that it is necessary and sometimes even the right thing to do, and we can see it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve a little consideration. So part one of closure, feel your feelings. Open your throat, get in the shower and cry. Go to the beach, take some rocks and throw them in the water. Do whatever you need to do to acknowledge that it hurts. And give yourself the grace of allowing that hurt to have a voice. And then we come to closure part two, if you will. And that is forgive it. On the cross, Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They know not what they do. Think about it for just a moment. If the Roman soldiers and Jewish leaders knew that in killing Jesus, they would actually propel a movement that would change the world, wouldn't they have been just as happy to let him rot in a prison somewhere? In the end, that whole process led into something remarkable. They knew not what they did. Without the crucifixion, without all of the pieces that played a part into making that happen, would the teachings of Jesus, these teachings of acceptance and love and grace, would they ever have reached us? Think of Judas, Jesus' friend, knowing that he was doing something that was a little underhanded, maybe a lot underhanded, but trusting that what he was doing was the right thing. He was trying to get Jesus to be the Messiah. And it wasn't working the way he wanted. So he tried something different and betrayed him instead. Sometimes there are unintended consequences from the actions of people who intend us harm, sometimes even those who don't. You know, in the book of Genesis, the story of Joseph, you know, of Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers. And what he said when he became the person who was essentially ruling Egypt, he said, what man intended for harm, God intended for good. And when we think of it in that way, if we trust and that there is faith, that there is bless in the mess, if we can stand firm in our own integrity, then at some point we can realize that we don't actually even need to forgive, because there is nothing to forgive. Everything works together for good. They know not what they do. Can we lean into that? Forgiving does not mean forgetting. It doesn't mean that what the other party did was okay. It doesn't mean that we condone the behavior. It simply means letting go of the negative energy that we hold about it. The story of 2 Korean War veterans who had been imprisoned during the war. Many years later, at a memorial service, they come together, and one man asks the other if he's forgiven his captors. And the man looks at him and he says, I will never forgive. To which his friend says, sounds like they still are holding you captive. Forgiveness is a way of freeing ourselves. What are you carrying? What am I carrying? What are we carrying that we can release? And then we move to finishing it. The final closure step, which is saying farewell. And what are some of the things that we see when we want to say farewell to something? Again, we see it in Jesus. The parts that matter, he turns over the care of his mother to his best friend. He makes sure that everything is in place. He says the final words that he wants to say. And then, finally, he says, it is finished. Now I commend my spirit. Now I'm ready. My invitation to you is to consider all the places in your life where you may do the if only I had. I wish I had. I ought to have. Any of those places, I think finishing and ending and moving forward becomes harder when we haven't finished our unfinished business. So if you have letters to write, phone calls to make them. Take one little step towards putting your house in order so that you can wholeheartedly move to whatever your next transition is. Living with no regrets, we can move to our next experience with the words, it is finished. And now we come to the death and the time in the tomb. That time when we die to the old way, the old belief, the old relationship, the old vision of how life could be, and all of a sudden it's not going to be. Whatever the old way is, now we're in that place of that hallway where there's this mishmash of old and new, and we're moving towards new. And the best way I can think of to describe this concept of the tomb is using the butterfly. Because did you know that butterflies start out as caterpillars? I'm guessing you all know this. Thank you, Eric Carl and the Very Hungry Caterpillar, for helping educate little ones about the beauty of how butterflies come to be. They start as caterpillars. But did you know that when they're caterpillars, they have things inside them that they will never use as a caterpillar? They're called seminal cells. And these seminal cells hold the key to their becoming a butterfly. So caterpillars eat and eat and eat. Then they say, it is finished. They create a cocoon. They go into the cocoon. And in this cocoon, they turn into a bit of a mush. Kind of like we might feel in that in-between stage of old and new. And in that stage, a seminal cell kind of raises its head, and the old eats it. And it raises another, and it eats it. And it raises another, and another, and another. And finally, the seminal cells, which were always there and never visible, start to take over, and they become wings. And they become beautiful parts of this new butterfly. Imaginal discs. Never used. They were pure potential when the caterpillar was just a caterpillar. They were waiting for their time, their moment to arise, if you will, when the old has been put away and is now transformed into something beautiful. So it can be with us too. It is in the cocoon, it is in the tomb that the old is put into its rightful place and the new starts to emerge. And the new emerges more beautiful, more triumphant, more exciting, and more lovely than we could ever have imagined. When we are faced with the Gethsemane moment, when we are faced with a crisis of relationship, of health, of faith, we have an opportunity to decide whether we're going to be the victim or the victor. Rather than run away or pretending it's not going to happen or resisting or fighting, we could follow the example that Jesus taught us. Face the situation. Faith the situation, that despite everything, there will be good on the other side. Stand firm. Feel the hurt. Forgive the perceived harm. Finish the old. Form anew. And then, once you have formed, you will emerge into this amazing new freedom. That is resurrection. That is the story of Easter, but it's the story of every change we have in our life. It's up to you. We are all of us, beautiful butterflies. Happy resurrection to you.